right, so you may have heard that we were only going to have 5 pop-up talk speakers. We hadn't done it before, so we weren't sure on timing. I also kind of thought maybe somebody would chicken out. So I asked someone to be a speaker alternate, and so I'm about to introduce that. This is a bonus pop-up talk. That's a new term for us. This is our 6th speaker and our 6th and final speaker. Okay, our next speaker learned that teachers deploy professionals to change the nature of learning in classrooms. His talk is When STEM Volunteers Bring It, They Change the World. Please welcome Cliff Zintgraff.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me here. I'm going to describe an experience that I think many of you are going to recognize, especially folks coming out in a group like this. You are out somewhere in the world and you see something happen that inspires you and you want to get out in the world and make some change. Maybe it's in the education space like me. Maybe it's in the space of politics, heaven forbid. Maybe it's in the space of education. But regardless of this, you are out in the world and you see something that you want to change. Now, what usually happens next? Well, there's a continuum, right? Sometimes you think about it a little bit and then you kind of let it go. Other times you might think about it a little bit more, but you never really get up the courage to do it. Other times you actually get out there and do something. And when you get out there and do something, sometimes you know you made a big difference, but sometimes you're not too sure. So what I want to do today is to share with you a story of some volunteers that I know are making a difference. Now, how do I know they're making a difference? Because they were the topic of my dissertation. I studied STEM volunteers and how educators view those volunteers. Now, the way I want to share this story with you is by starting by giving you the title of my dissertation. Now, hold on just a minute. How many of you have ever seen a title of a dissertation? Thank you very much. They're about a paragraph long. They're full of fancy adjectives and big words. I am going to tell you the title of my dissertation, but I'm going to use it to tell you my story. And by the time I'm done, you will know the story that I want to share with you about STEM volunteers. So you ready? Here I go. STEM professional volunteers. Everybody knows what STEM stands for? Science, technology, engineering, and math. Professional volunteers. These are people who have day jobs, but think it's important enough to take the time to help students, to help teachers, to help their city. And so I studied these volunteers who are taking the time to give this service. STEM professional volunteers in K-12 competition programs. What do I mean by that? Well, actually, I studied 2 in particular. One I know many people are familiar with. It's called FIRST Robotics. How many of you are familiar with FIRST Robotics? Going to get a show of hands. Students who are doing coding. Here there's some participants in FIRST. They're doing coding. They're building robots. They have to learn mechanical engineering and so forth. And they need volunteers to help with these efforts. A second one is a big deal for our city. The name of the competition is Cyber Patriot. How many of you might come from the cyberspace that are in this audience? Cybersecurity is a big deal for San Antonio. There's a big education effort here to support that space. And so I studied these 2 kinds of volunteers, but specifically I looked at how educators view them. Every dissertation title needs a colon. STEM professional volunteers in K-12 competition programs, colon, educator practices. Now, this is something I'm very passionate about because I looked at those volunteers, not what I think, not what they think, but what the teachers think about them, how the teachers found them, how the teachers used them once they were placed in the classroom. I feel this is very important because sometimes we think from the outside we can tell educators how to do their job and we forget. They are professionals. They do things that work. They do things that help meet their objectives in the classroom. And so I wanted to understand their viewpoint of how they use these volunteers. How do they deploy them in the best ways? And the rest of my title is, and impact on pedagogy. Now there's that big word. Pedagogy means the way we teach. How is it that we can teach students in ways that they will learn the most? And so this is where my dissertation got really interesting and exciting, and I think very cool. Because what I learned is that when teachers bring volunteers into the classroom, they're much less interested in getting some random help behind the scenes. even getting help developing curriculum, even getting help buying resources. What they wanted to do more than anything else is to put those teachers in front of students and make them co-teachers. Now, why is this? Because if you think about it, those professional volunteers have professional experience. They know the real world. And their students can tell the difference between something that is purely academic and something that is real-world experience that helps those students learn, retain, and apply in a way that they simply could not achieve in any other way. Now, like a good researcher, I did surveys. Surveys are lots of fun. But also like a good researcher, I went and talked to the people who did my surveys afterwards. And what I discovered is they believe that they simply cannot deliver that same experience without those volunteers being present. So my word to you is, if you've ever thought about volunteering in education, in another space, I strongly encourage you to engage. These volunteers did not understand the difference they were making, that they're not simply adding something somewhat interesting. Without them being present, there is something fundamental that would be missing from that educational experience. Please find your passion, get out, and volunteer. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Cliff. One question. So if you were going to recommend an organization to volunteer with, what would be an example of one?
Can I be biased?
Yes.
I participate with an organization called Systemic. Think of the word systemic, but SA for San Antonio. Systemic.org, look us up, or email us at info@systemic.org, and I will connect you wherever you need to be to make a difference.
Thank you so much, Cliff. All right, round of applause for Cliff. That concludes our pop-up talks. We're going to get together back in the main theater in about 30 minutes. Enjoy the rest of the program and use your question cards. Thank you.